Hi, Mickey.
Hey, Bob.
Oh, my God, a visual prop, Mickey. Who'd have guessed? Those are... are we playing three card... What do they call that street game in New York? Three card... What do they call it?
No, this is... I don't know. It's some sort of shell game.
It's a shell game, right? It's the equivalent of it. That is a shell game, and three card Monty is or something is the card equivalent.
Guess what I'm symbolizing, Bob?
Oh, that is the choice that Joe Manchin has given.
Oh my God!
Pretty good,
you got
huh?
it right.
Yeah, he's saying they got to choose. Do you want child tax credit? Do you want child care subsidy, or do you want what is the third?
Parental leave.
Parental leave,
or some kind of leave. For sick people, for if you have a sick relative. And he says you got to pick one of the three.
I mean, here's my question. Is this kind of more obnoxious of him to do it this way than to say, here's what's really important to me. I want this thing?
Yes, but I have a feeling I know what's important to him, Bob. And it is the child tax credit, free money.
But that it doesn't matter what's important to him because that's not how he's playing the game. He's giving them their choice, right?
Right, but he also yes, but I think he thinks the child tax credit is more popular. And if you read a piece by a reporter named Kane, I forget his first name, in the Post, one of his big things is he doesn't like new programs. Well, you can argue the child tax credit is an old program because it's existed for a year under the COVID relief plan. So, and Biden, it's weird. Biden said one of them about talking about Sinema and Manchin really likes the child tax credit, and I thought he was talking about Sinema, but he might have been talking about Manchin. Now, I think the child tax credit's a disaster for the country if it goes to people who don't work, and Manchin supposedly wants to work test it, so maybe it'll all work out, but. I definitely want you to stop laughing at me for making a big deal of the child tax credit.
Wait, why should I stop laughing? I want to keep laughing.
Because it turns out that that's a crucial program at the center of the debate that's consuming Washington.
Wait, you mean because you and Joe Manchin agree on something, I have to acknowledge that it's like a
because it's important, point? It's salient, it's what they're talking about. I'm not talking about some obscure little.
So it's kind of like
I'm talking about the key negatively transformational part of Biden's
so you're saying because it may play a big role in the negotiating that it's one of the big three, I should accord it some respect.
You should accord me some respect.
Well, I'm afraid that can't happen. I would lower your horizons, your goals or whatever the metaphor is. I may accord it some respect. I'm afraid you're out of the question.
It's big of you, Bob.
But I don't see how this should change.
You need me just like he needs Joe Manchin.
I've often compared you to that, whatever the hell you're talking about. Yes, but you're saying I should pay more respect to your position on this issue? What does this have to do with that?
I just think you shouldn't. You should say Mickey was right to make a fuss about the child tax credit because it turns out to be the most important thing in the whole damn bill.
According to Joe Manchin. By the same token, I should agree that it's important that we burn a lot of coal forever because, after all, that's what Joe Manchin thinks. Whatever Joe Manchin thinks, I should agree is like super important.
It's also a favorite of the Democrats, other than Joe Manchin, and you know it's there's this idiot from the not the third way, it's some other centrist, the New Democrats, who thinks it's the greatest thing in the world.
When you've lost the New Democrats, Mickey, I don't know.
Maybe I'll make it up with the problem solvers or the third way.
Yeah.
I think I've lost all of them.
I think you've lost the problem solvers.
But there was a big study that came out just yesterday showing that, yes, the child tax credit, the refundable child tax credit, if you got rid of the refundability, it'd be fine. It's refundable to people who don't work and don't pay taxes, and that will reduce work significantly, such that it cuts in half just even the short-term estimate of how much poverty is reduced. It may wipe out any gains in deep poverty, and it may completely turn back all the gains in employment that came among single mothers from welfare reform, because it affects the decision of whether people go from no work to work, because no work is now much more lucrative for them, and work is less lucrative.
Well,
it didn't quite impact it in the way I expected, but
wait, yeah, I know what the theory is. The theory is that if you pay them, whether or not they work, they won't work. But what is the new evidence? What is the dependent variable?
Well,
here?
they got some new data. Some economists at the Chicago got some new data sets, and they looked at a variable that the big National Academy study that everybody points to as justifying the child tax credit, which of course was conducted by child tax credit advocates, ignored. And what they ignored was not what I expected. They ignored the there are two effects: the income effect and the substitution effect. I get them confused. I think the income effect is I have so much income I don't need to go to work. That's what I expected it to affect. It didn't affect that. It affected the substitution effect because work paid less than it did before, than it does now, than it does under the work test. Under the work test, you get nothing unless you get $2,500, and then you get 15% of your earnings until some number like 18,000, where you.
So your job in effect pays more than the wage
Instead
itself.
of paying $1, it pays $1.15, and if you get rid of that phase out, it has a big impact in discouraging people from going to work in the first place. It turns out, surprisingly, according to this study, there's obviously going to be a war of the studies, and the advocates are going to come back saying we have a new data set and blah, blah, blah. But the point is, the National Academy study is sort of junk at this point, and they're going to have to come up with a new one. So that was a big
there's
coup for my side. I don't know if anybody noticed.
There's some data I saw, maybe because you tweeted it, and maybe it comes from the same study. I don't know, but it was being promulgated by people who agree with you on this, and it was evidence that I think when they ended the work requirement, the number of unwed mothers who were working, either that went up, or it was when they introduced it that it went down. Does one of those things make sense? Did you see this?
It soared under welfare reform.
The number who were working soared. Okay, so here's my
under
question.
Welfare reform, and the question is, when they imposed a work requirement, and I think it's a little early to I haven't seen any numbers that say it plummeted in the 2 months.
No, maybe that's what I saw. So number of unwed mothers who are working grows substantially when they introduce the work requirement for welfare. Now here's my question. I assume you were touting this number too, or generally would tout it, right?
Which number? The increase?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a debate as to whether how much of it is from welfare and how much of it is from the earned income tax credit, and
wait, isn't there another?
Blah, blah, blah.
Shouldn't there be another debate? I mean, what occurred to me is is it necessarily a good thing when an unwed mother has to go to work? I mean, might it not be better for the child if she's there to take care of the child?
Well, that was the big debate, and we decided the decision was made under welfare reform that it is better because, if you read Jason DePaul's book, American Dream, it's a pretty good. I don't trust these studies. I trust a good reporter's account of what's actually happening. And he has these mothers on welfare in Milwaukee, and their lives are complete chaos. Guns are fired, drug dealer boyfriends going in and out. And when the lead character goes to work, she gets out of the ghetto. She goes to places she never had been before. And it turns out she's good at what she does. She's a nurse's aide. She likes taking care of people. The patients like her. And it was definitely a good thing for her. And that's the argument, that it decreases social isolation. It gives people skills. It gives people self-respect. It gives the kids a role model. It prevents having neighborhoods where none of the parents work, which is a terrible place for kids to grow up, which is what we had.
I
it's
appreciate
generally a good mothers working, and most mothers do work in this day and age, is a good thing.
I see the upside. My point is just that there must be some cases where it's mainly downside, where The mother has to work. She would have done a good job of taking care of the kid, and she has to go to work, and bad things happen or whatever. And it just, my point was just, I realized, like, not all of that upswing is good news. That's not 100% good news. It can't be the case that everyone is the woman, the one data point that Jason DeParle happened to choose or chose to choose, right? I mean, you're skeptical of studies. I'm skeptical of anecdotes that individual journalists choose to highlight.
There are a bunch of other measures of goodwill that turned around slightly, like, you know, the idea is not just to help individual families, it's to help the whole society shift from a one-parent, unmarried, illegitimate child model to a two-parent breadwinner in the house model, which I think is everybody agrees is better for kids, and there's a reams of data showing that.
Yeah, but if you're
and it gradually, that's a very hard ocean liner to turn around. But there's some data that show it is turning around, and it was turning around with welfare reform. So it's not just what's best for the individual child, of course, is important, but it's not the only thing you're going for. You're also going for what's best for society.
So anyway, so what is going to happen here? So it is the case, right, that Manchin is saying you decide. You guys, you progressives decide what you want the most. And I guess that's the other thing is that they may find annoying is I gather he's saying choose all of one rather than choosing half of two of them.
Or a third of three of them, yeah.
Right.
And his top line cost for the plan has been cut in half, so they're going to have to choose something. And he's saying, you know, this is as much as I can stomach. It was sort of a colorful way to put it, and puts the ball in their court. And I don't know, it causes people to think. And so some of the parental leave one is especially weak. I mean, it's like this massive $225 billion plan that gives people, I think, 12 weeks of leave a year. Imagine if you're an employer and you know, Bob, what if I just said, hey, I'm going to take 12 weeks off. I don't even have to have a note from a doctor. I just say, hey, I have an aunt who's sick, or my spouse is sick. And you don't.
Oh, that's not for child rearing only. That's not for a new birth only.
I don't think so. No, I think it's for illness.
Well,
and then you're I don't know who you're stuck with for 12 weeks, Bob, but.
So is this thing going to happen? I mean, when will my suffering end? When can we quit talking about this stuff? When are they going to do this?
I think it's going to last through Christmas.
No, God, no.
Nobody's saying that. Everybody's saying it's going to come to a head at Christmas. But, you know, if you look at I think they will reach a deal. I think it's inconceivable that they will not pass both parts of the plan. It's a question of what's in them.
If it's going to last till Christmas, can we agree to quit starting our conversations with it? Obviously, it's just not. It can't be headline news every week between now and then.
But it's the only one I had a visual gimmick for, Bob.
Oh, well, okay. In that case, it was a good gimmick. I was just. It reminds me of the Monty Hall problem. We can talk about that in the Parrot Room. I guess if Monty Hall, well, for younger viewers, there was a show called Let's Make a Deal, and the contestant, Monty Hall, says, pick a door. She says, door number 1, and they show him it's like a washer dryer, and she knows there's like a car behind one of them, and then there's, and it's okay, she didn't get the car. Now there's 2 left, and he says, now I'm going to show you one of them. And he shows her, and it's like a goat or something she doesn't want. And he says, now you have the chance to switch. Do you want to switch to door number 3, or do you want to stay with door number 1? Now, the Monty Hall question is, what should she do? Is there something that it clearly makes sense to do, given the fact that Monty Hall, he's going to raise the door that doesn't have the car. Okay, so he knows which door it was. He didn't open it.
There are more than 3 doors.
No, there's always 3 doors. What were you doing as a child if not watching Let's Make a Deal, Mickey? There were always 3 doors.
I was playing baseball with Monty Hall's son, Bob.
Talk about a misspent youth. Did you know Monty Hall's son?
Yeah, he went to my high school.
You knew Monty Hall's son? You're like
I went to star-studded Beverly High, Bob.
only last week I thought Ezra Klein was a god among men, but I'm going to have to transfer that title
But
to you.
but I don't understand if there's a washer dryer in one and a goat behind one and a car behind one of them, then car is obviously behind door number 3. In your hypothetical, there's no alternative.
Oh wait, you're right. I got it wrong. She chooses door number 1, but they don't open it. So that's the one she's committed to, unless she changes. She's gonna get what's behind door number 1. She hasn't seen it. She knows that he knows which one it's gonna behind, and he's gonna open the one with the goat. He opens the one with the goat, shows it to her. Should she switch to door number 3? Turns out there's a clear answer, but most people get it wrong. I was just.
What is the clear answer?
The clear answer: she should switch. The chances of it being behind door number 3 are 2 out of 3. And the chances of it being behind door number 1 are 1 out of 3.
Why is that? I mean, why?
The answer is
that makes no sense.
I know it's a tough one. It's a famous. Do you remember Marilyn, the genius woman who had a column in Parade magazine, the Sunday supplement?
Marilyn Vos Savant.
Yes, the smartest woman in the history smartest human ever. She had an IQ of like 9,400 or something.
I thought it was 206.
Okay, like good enough. Anyway. She published the correct answer and got all this shit from mathematicians mansplaining that she was wrong. Because intuitively, it's easy to convince yourself that the chances are 1 and 2. There's 2 doors left. Okay, but here's the way I explain it.
But if you know Monty Hall, you know he's saved the car.
You know he's got a card up his sleeve, so to speak. So this, I was just reading Steve Pinker's new book because I'm going to have him on my show, and this was in that. This is not the way he explained it, but it's the way I think it makes sense to explain it. Look, before Monty Hall has done anything, you know that the chances are 1/3 that it's behind door number 1, and the chances are 2 and 3 that it's behind either 2 or 3, right?
Right.
Okay. He hasn't done anything to change that calculation. The chances are still 2 and 3 that it's behind 2 or 3, and you know it's not 2. I mean, in effect, when you choose 3, you're choosing 2 or 3, and you know the chances are still 2 and 3 that it's behind door 2 or 3.
Okay.
So there.
Thank you, Marilyn. So,
God, that was. I'm willing to read a whole book to get us off the subject of Joe Manchin, and so it was worth reading Steve's book.
But how does that affect Joe Manchin? That's what I don't understand.
It does, and it's just what I. It's just what I thought. I mean, maybe Joe Manchin should do it. Look, this would be no more ridiculous than American politics already is if they got all of like the progressives and put them in the crowd, and Joe Manchin was Monty Hall, and he said, "Okay, what door do you want?" And then he pulls up door number, 2, and it's child tax credit. Do you want to pick? Of course, it's not analogous because it's not clear which one they value, but
it's a coal burning power plant.
Yeah, I have bad news. You've chosen an increase in the rate of burning coal.
Anyway, the animosity between Bernie Sanders is pursuing this what seems to be a strange strategy to woo Sinema and Manchin, which is to attack them brutally and clumsily. So much so that Biden said he couldn't have it in the same room because it would be homicide.
Hey, he didn't chase her into a bathroom. I think he's a model of decorum.
He didn't chase her into a bathroom that we know of, but it's not clear to me that is an ineffective strategy. Sometimes when you're a reporter and you have somebody who you've attacked and they get mad and you want them to cooperate, there's right strategies to attack them more, so they know that if they don't cooperate, you're going to keep attacking them, and you'll stop if they cooperate, rather than suck up to them.
It can work both ways. If stereotypes about men and women are true, I would be careful if I were him. I think there may actually be evidence of this, but that men are in a sense less principled on these matters, and more. The actual finding is that men are more opportunistic in shifting coalitions and things than women.
Sorry?
I'd be careful if I were Bernie.
Yeah. Especially Manchin, who's famous for, kicking up a fuss and then going along at the end. So that's what I worry about the work requirement. He touts work to please his constituents, and then he caves at the end. So to my mind, that's the most crucial thing going on in Washington, Bob.
I know, but one more question about that. So wait, what does Bernie want at this point? Does he think he can raise the aggregate number above $2 trillion or so, which I gather is
I think they're just debating whether it's 1.7 trillion or 2.2 trillion. But if you believe in the programs, that extra 0.5 trillion
totally.
can buy a lot of programs.
Totally, I could. You give me $5 trillion, I'll quickly, one thing I found out, we had said, Manchin had said, look, I told them a long time ago that 1.5 trillion was, the impression I got was he was saying it was my ceiling, but apparently that's not what happened. What he told them was, I can't guarantee my support if it's more than 1.5 trillion.
Right, okay.
So's the floor. And so he would not be violating that laid down marker if he, went all the way up to 3.5 trillion. But anyway.
Betsy McCoy has written a couple articles on looking for the disasters in the bill. And I'm sure they're there, and I don't quite trust Betsy McCoy.
Good.
She found
with
a couple.
With good reason you don't trust
Well,
her. She
wrote an article for the New Republic called No Exit about the Clinton healthcare plan that claimed you'll be forced into this healthcare plan and there'll be no exit. And
it was a famously misleading article.
But the counter argument to that was always, which I bought, and I thought McCoy was wrong at the time, was no, it's like private schools versus public schools, which is you'll pay for the public plan, but you can always bail out and go on your own to private health care if you don't like, if the government denies you a cancer treatment, you can find some doctor who for millions of dollars will give you a cancer treatment, and you always have that safety valve. But but then it became obvious after that whole fuss that the Hillary Clinton types were going to try to institute a rule where if you didn't take the Medicare payment, you couldn't take any Medicare patients at all, which means that these private doctors would be completely cut off from Medicare and all the good doctors would be in Medicare. So you really wouldn't have much of an exit. She may have been half right at least. In the end anyway. Anyway, she's unreliable. But
so what point is she making now?
She there's a lot of union giveaways in the bill, as you would expect. There's this home energy efficiency money of like $11,000 to increase the energy efficiency of your home, but it has to be done by a union worker. There's like over $1 billion to, part of their whole thing is they want to unionize home health care and have that be the way old people are taken care of, not in homes, but not in nursing homes, but in your actual home. And they give over $1 billion to the unions to recruit new workers. That's a lot of money. And she also claims that there's a race preference in this system where, there's a $200 bonus if you recruit minorities for this system. I don't know if that will hold up in court. And her long piece claims that there's an actual preference for communities of color for getting this energy efficiency money. But I noticed that claim disappeared from the New York Post piece, and I wonder if that's because their fact checker decided it wasn't right. Anyway, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff like that. I would like to see somebody reliable go through the bill, like James Bovard or some Reason sleuth, and tell me all the crap.
Reason magazine, not Reason the abstract cognitive process.
Right, Reason magazine.
We've already established she's about half right. I mean, maybe Manchin should just have somebody pick which 50% of the things she's saying are true or something. Well, there must be some way of finding out.
These aren't in programs that Manchin cares about. The energy efficiency grants are not something he's made a fuss about.
Well, then I will demand that she pick which half are actually true and tell us.
Just to get the topics you love out of the way first.
Is this going to be a change of subject?
Well, one of the reasons it's going to jam up in December is because that's when the debt limit they think is going to come.
God, no, I totally have a moratorium on debt limit discussion.
No, I have a simple point to make about the debt limit, okay? Everybody's saying, why are they behaving like this? It's completely insane, and it is completely insane. Okay, there shouldn't be a debt limit. I can't believe the politics of voting for an actual number on the debt are that toxic for either side. But there, if you look at the underlying motive of McConnell and Schumer, it explains everything. All McConnell wants to do is waste the Democrats' time so they don't spend it on this big bill that they're negotiating. So the more he delays it, the less popular Joe Biden gets, the longer it lasts, the closer they get to Election Day, the harder it is for them. Has
anybody written this?
Oh, yeah. But Punch Bowl has basically written it. They occasionally forget it. But they say McConnell's goal is chaos. Okay, that is shorthand for he wants to fill up the take away the energy from the Democrats for negotiating this bill that he hates. And Schumer's goal is to force a confrontation where they will have to get rid of the filibuster. So he wants it to be either the country is plunged into depression and loses its credit, or you relax the filibuster. So he was teeing up that confrontation. And neither of them, and everybody's saying Schumer won because McConnell blinked, but McConnell achieved this goal. He wasted 2 weeks of their time, and Schumer did not achieve his goal, which is he did not get rid of the filibuster. So that whole clash got put off until December. Something that's now got put off until February. But neither one completely achieved their goal, but McConnell's goal could be achieved in short increments. He wastes a month here, he wastes a month there. Eventually, you've wasted all their time. And Manchin's popularity is plummeting, Biden's popularity is plummeting sort of dramatically, more dramatically than you think would be justified.
It's pretty bad. And I mean, that's why he needs certainly the first bill, probably some version of the second.
I give him points for not going into crisis mode like Jimmy Carter and saying, oh, I'm going to go to Camp David and deliver a malaise speech, because my administration's in crisis. He's refusing to acknowledge his administration is in crisis, which is sort of admirable in a way, and probably a better way to deal with it, because eventually people will forget about Afghanistan, and eventually he'll pass.
I don't know. I mean, I think the media is pretty determined to keep that going because, in truth, Afghanistan is divided, between rural and urban, and a lot of the urban people hate the Taliban, but a lot of the rural people are very happy to have the war over and the Taliban running things, or at least happier than they were. But, the kinds of people that run our media are the kinds of people who relate to the urban Afghans, and they're the ones they sympathize with, and they're the ones whose values they're closer to sharing. So we're going to be getting their perspective for a super long time.
It's weird. There are all these stories about how the Taliban government is going to collapse, that they won their victory, and now the centrifugal forces that were held together by opposition to the Americans are gone. The centripetal forces and the centrifugal forces of ethnic rivalries are going to pull them apart. And they might be, the Taliban, national government might be stuck only with Kabul, whereas the countryside is various ethnic fiefdoms.
Wouldn't that be ironic?
I don't think that'll affect popular perception one way or the other, but it might make Biden look better that, hey, we got out, but hey, they collapsed anyway, so fuck them,
Well, one threat they face is ISIS. There was a bombing, big bombing today or yesterday or something, I think. I don't know if that's the kind of thing that could hold the country together. A problem they face is, I think, I assume we're still holding on to a lot of money that belongs to the government of Afghanistan, and we're not acknowledging, I guess, that's a legitimate government or something.
I assume China will bail them out or something and get something in exchange for that.
Yeah, one thing the occupation had done is make Afghanistan very dependent on foreign aid. They had just gotten used to it. And now, if we're withdrawing that's a serious problem for the Taliban. I think you're right. A number of regional players have an interest in establishing good relations with the government, and China certainly one. So
maybe we could have a child tax credit for Afghanistan, so they become dependent on free money, and then, when it goes away, they collapse.
Speaking of China, just a quick clarification. I did a thing about this in the news, in the Nonzero newsletter today. There've been a lot of stories about Chinese military planes flying over Taiwan's airspace. I mean, a whole lot of media outlets and politicians, including Robert Menendez, who's chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, have put it like that, flying over Taiwan's airspace. That's not what's happening. I mean, it is more provocative than usual. It is something to pay attention to, but they haven't come within 100 miles of Taiwan's airspace.
It's some air exclusion zone that they've drawn.
Yeah, it's an air. It's kind of the zone you monitor, and it's so big that there's a huge portion of it that's actually over the Chinese mainland. And I mean, really, like a third of it. But this is definitely something China's doing to pull their chain and to accomplish other things and send a signal and so on. But
you think it was a mistake?
What?
Send the Marines?
Do I think what was a mistake?
It was a mistake for Biden to send in a platoon of Marines. I
don't. It could be a reaction to whatever Biden has been doing there militarily. I don't know exactly. Taiwan's a very difficult issue. But, we have flown into China's, whatever that zone is called, the Air Defense Identification Zone or something, and China's flown into Taiwan's before. It's not brand new. It's just the magnitude of the intrusions. It's probably a response to Biden or something. I mean, Taiwan's a super messy issue.
No, I think Biden sent the Marines in response to the air intrusions, but I wonder if it's like putting troops in Ukraine or the Baltics. I remember Condi Rice. One of the things I was impressed with Condi Rice was when she said, if we put U.S. troops there, they will not invade. They just won't. And I wonder if, because we have a troop presence there, however small, that is a significant.
Well, did he send? I may have missed this. Did he send Marines to the Taiwanese mainland for the?
I'm pretty sure, yes.
And you mean we now have land forces stationed there for the first time or something?
I think so, unless I misread the headline.
That would be a big thing.
I don't think it was a lot of Marines, but there were some.
Yeah, there's a big difference between 0 and 1.
I see another newsletter in your future.
Well, you may see an amendment to this one. It's not out yet. What do you think of the?
Nope.
Yeah, I was going to say
the worst thing about Biden's popularity, Biden's, is that Trump's popularity is rising.
I know.
More. My goal is Trump not run for president or lose in 2024. Okay, and we can get to Robert Kagan's disaster scenario about how awful that would be.
Did you read Kagan's piece?
I did read Kagan's piece.
Oh, good. Maybe we can discuss it in the Parrot Room. I haven't read it. Is it at all persuasive?
Everybody's talking about it's exaggerated. Yeah, it's it's complicated. He paints the threat so dire that he doesn't have a solution for it, and I think he's exaggerated the threat, but they're real threats he faces. For example, if Trump loses big, there's going to be a lot of violence from his people. Okay, even if he concedes, there's going to be he won't concede, but if he loses by 15 points, there's still going to be a lot of violence. Okay, Kagan has no solution. There's no solution to that other than to put the violence down. Okay, he has no solution.
Well, can you blame him? What are you going to do? What would you do other than put it down?
But his whole thing is like Mitt Romney. The whole thing on the left is now, if you don't support Biden's Build Back Better piece, you're contributing to the end of democracy in America as you're empowering the Republican Party, and the Republican Party is a vehicle for Trump's fascist goals. Okay? But even if you pass the Build Back Better bill because you buy this bullshit, there's still going to be violence. So it doesn't solve the problem. Anyway, we can talk about it. The point is, more Republicans now want Trump to run than in January, which is horrifying. You would want it to be going the other direction at this point, and that's a function, I think, that they hate Biden, and Trump has a built-in issue, which is, I'm not Biden, I'm not going to fuck up like Biden on the border. I'm not going to fuck up at Afghanistan, blah, blah, blah.
Didn't they give Biden credit for having guys on horses whip migrants?
They should give Biden credit for he did discover this what is now accepted as sort of the magic bullet against migration, which is you take a few people and you just ship them somewhere by plane that they really don't want to go. And for the Haitians, it was back to Haiti, and they hadn't been in Haiti for 10 years, and that scared a whole lot of people away. Britain is now trying to fly people to Albania to drop them off. And I guess the argument is if you only do that to 10%, it scares the other 90%. And Biden's gotten so much shit for that from the left that he's not going to be able to do it again. And B, the 60,000 Haitian migrants who are heading our way don't seem to have let that deter them. They have the very, very sophisticated sense of who will get sent by plane back to Haiti and who won't, and it's not women and children. So the women and children are still coming.
Well, I mean, I'm just repeating myself, but I think the Democrats, there's no point in even starting a sentence this way, like the Democrats have to figure something out, because there's no Democratic leadership. I mean, it's there's no smoke-filled rooms anymore. There aren't these elites who can get together and figure something out and make it happen.
Well, but Biden could.
Well, no, but what they have to figure out is how to get rid of Biden. I mean, what I'm saying is what the party needs to do is figure out a way that the nominee can be neither Harris nor Biden. That's imperative. That's imperative
But
if they want to
Biden
beat
is perfectly
Trump.
capable of being sensible on immigration. He's just so weak that he's
No, Mickey,
being pushed
the guy
around by the
is
left.
in some measure in cognitive decline. It's not going to be pretty in 3 years when he's...
If you listen to, I'm more convinced than ever listening in the past week to his discussions of his negotiations with Manchin and Sinema. He seems to be all there.
Wait, you mean listening to him speak impromptu or hearing what is
happening?
happening?
Speak impromptu. Him saying that he can't have Manchin, he can't have Sanders and Sinema in the same room because that would be homicide. That's a guy who's in touch with the feelings of the people he's negotiating with. He doesn't seem to be fucking up. He seems to be doing that part well, and he's perfectly capable of saying, Mr. Mayorkas, thank you for your service, but we're taking a different direction, and firing Mayorkas and hiring somebody else.
Well, it's funny. I feel that a Biden who's 100% there, which I personally do not think we had even a year ago, I think we had it 5 years ago, is actually in principle a very effective candidate against Trump. He really is, like on paper, and just it's the way he comes through. I mean, he's kind of a regular guy, It's not like Trump running against Hillary or Obama or Kamala Harris. He's just a regular white guy.
Trump may be the only guy he's effective against, because when he runs against his fellow Democrats, he gets clobbered.
Does he? When's he done that?
Well, I mean,
you mean in the had he
in
not
the primaries?
Had there not been the Deus Ex Machina in South Carolina?
Yes. But compared to Trump, I agree he's the anti-Trump.
Yeah.
But
anyway, I'm repeating myself, but I very much worry about Biden running for re-election. Speaking of which, relatedly, would somebody have a word with Breyer, please? I mean, he's got one more year before the Republicans are controlling the Senate, right? Time to step down.
Well, I don't share your horrible concerns. But,
no, you don't share my concerns, but you agree that it would be the judicious, no pun intended, thing to do.
Yeah, but that's the other thing about Kagan is the weak spot in all these conspiracy theories about how fascism is going to come to America is, and Trump has the Supreme Court in his pocket and they'll do whatever he says. No, they won't. I mean, that's very far-fetched. They're not his guys. They're the Federalist Society's guys. They're Bush's guys. They're Republicans. They're gonna stiff-arm Trump if it comes to that, the same way that they stiff-armed him in 2020 when he thought they were in his pocket. So
I certainly agree. They're not people who like Trump by and large.
Yeah. The official David Shore, Ezra Klein's sort of half-endorsed solution to immigration for Biden is not to talk about it. And that just seems a ridiculous solution. How can you not talk about it when people are streaming through the border? Why not talk sense about it? It sure seems to say the Democrats have to cling to their, loose border views, and they'll win if they just don't talk about it. Well, I just don't see that working. Seems a ridiculous position.
Yeah, I don't know. The problem is maybe in the Parrot Room I'll lay out some of my reform agenda for in a dream world where we could rewrite the Constitution. Reform agenda.
I live in that world, Bob.
Good. We'll have a good conversation in the Parrot Room then. So what about
the key question is, why is Biden unable to stand up to the left? That's what I don't understand.
Wait, I'm going to read you.
When has he ever stood up to the left in his months in office?
How has he not stood up to the left?
Well, he's kept Mayorkas there, and Mayorkas is
oh, you mean on this
letting people
particular
stream
issue
through the border? He hasn't told.
Well, wait, he had these migrants either shipped to Haiti or horsewhipped. I'm kidding about the horsewhipping, kind of, because it wasn't quite what happened. But I mean, so you just said that he took this very aggressive action with respect to Haiti, and so aggressive that there's been an outcry on the left. But he did it.
There is that.
Well, what do you want?
That's one.
And then there's a horsewhipping. What do you want?
But I mean, on the spending bill, he hasn't publicly told anybody, the way Clinton endorsed welfare reform, and he had to tell the left to stuff it for the next year. Okay, Biden hasn't done anything like that.
Well, look, I think his instinct is definitely to be, to the right on immigration of the kind of progressive talking points. On the other hand, remember that the progressive consensus on this issue crystallized amid the resistance as an anti-Trump thing, and so I think it still has a lot of residual energy, not to mention the fact that, the progressive elites see it as part and parcel of their whole kind of, I guess you could say, identity politics approach to coalition building. So I don't know. He faces, there's only so much you can do.
And the whole Build Back Better thing is like, say yes to them all and pile them up and we'll have one big bill. It's not, he hasn't, I don't think, maybe I missed, it's hard to know what's not there, but.
Well, they originally
I don't think he's told the big interest group, no, sorry, you can't have your way.
Well, they originally wanted something like $6 trillion. There must have been some programs associated with the 2.5 that got cut right away.
You would think, but I don't know what they are. Mostly what they did was they shortened the length of the program so that they only funded them for 4 years, and they figure, well, they'll just, they'll get reinstated, so it really will be $6 trillion in the end. He hasn't done some big things. He hasn't done Medicare for all. He hasn't done some things he should do, which is lower the Medicare age to 64.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I mean,
I think is a very intelligent solution from some on the left. Dean Baker, I think, proposed it. Good idea.
Yeah, no, that would be a real crowd pleaser, and the on the fence, potential Trump supporters would like that. I'm sure a lot of them are like between the ages of whatever, 50 and 65. Depends on how much you want to lower the age threshold for Medicare. But
yeah.
So I guess in any of it, do we think that would be even better than this? I was about to ask: is it still the case that dental coverage in Medicare is in whatever's going to pass?
I don't know. I think it's waning. I think
man.
I still think the consensus is
these people are idiots.
The first thing they have to do is shore up Obamacare.
These people wouldn't know politics smart politics if they met it on the street. Are you kidding me? Dental coverage for Medicare? Everyone over 65 loves you for that.
Starting in 8 years.
Is that the way it would work as it's planned?
That's the way it was going to work.
Oh, man. My teeth are not going to last that long. They haven't lasted this long.
Anyway, I think the idea that Ron Klain is really running the presidency, that idea gained credence when it sort of became clear that Klain was the guy who told the progressives, no, you don't really have to vote for this bipartisan infrastructure bill. we're going to let you stick it to Pelosi and cause the bill to fail or not have enough votes. And it seemed like Klain was the guy who did that. But on the other hand, Biden has not been, out of it enough to, it seems to me, to validate the general theory that Ron Klain is running things.
So, Mickey, what do you think of these Pandora Papers?
It's one of these stories that, this just sheds tremendous light on the secrets of the rich and famous, and they don't tell you any of the secrets of the rich and famous. Name some names and people who and how much money they have stashed overseas, and then we'll have a story. But don't just say massive leak reveals secrets and then write 20 paragraphs where you don't reveal any of the secrets.
I think they're rolling it out week by week, aren't they? But the other thing is, stories that don't seem huge to us can have impact abroad. Like originally, when I heard, King Abdullah of Jordan owns 3 homes in California. Oh my God, imagine a Middle Eastern king who owns property. But, he apparently spent $100 million on property abroad. And in Jordan, this matters because it's not like Saudi Arabia, which has oil. It's a poor country, and people aren't doing that well. And I think this is a big story there. And Al Qaeda and ISIS, would love to overthrow him. And if they're trying to recruit people in Jordan to become suicide bombers or something, life just got easier for them. I think that's definitely true. And I think there's a lot. So there's a lot. What I would say, if there's a generalization you can probably make based on the various kinds of effects it'll have in the various countries that don't catch our attention right away, it's I think going to maybe Trump should be happy. It will add to anti-elite sentiment. It may. I don't know, but I think there's more there than meets our eyes.
I don't think they have any big Democrats they have Tony Blair stashing things abroad, but
apparently there are not many Americans whose financial secrets are illuminated, because I gather that the leakers, I think these leaks came from a lot of money managers, asset managers. And it sounds like kind of none of them were American, or very few of them were American. The American part of the picture isn't being illuminated, except to the extent that America has become a haven for these people, right. A place for them to put their money. Like South Dakota intentionally changed their laws to make themselves more attractive for this, and it turns out there's a lot of stuff there. But the part of the picture that's not illuminated is what American rich people are doing with their money.
There is some Putin angle, though, I think.
It turns out his mistress, and I think maybe part of the story is confirmation that he has a mistress. But anyway, she has apparently a lot of property in her name abroad. I don't mean, well, anyway. That I think that's that story. I don't know how that impacts him. I think,
he's under attack from the Communist Party now.
Is he?
You saw that?
No. Is that true?
The Communist Party almost unseated his candidate in some seat in Moscow, and they're now rebelling against Putin's control. So he's having a lot of problem with young communists. I don't think communist means what it used to mean there.
Yeah. But it probably just means nostalgic for Soviet days when
I don't
people
even know if
paid
they're
them
young.
more
These are
respect
young people
on the world stage. Well, yeah, but even so, I mean, I remember, when I was in the Soviet Union, back in its final days as the Soviet Union, Gorbachev was still the leader, and we were waiting for the midnight train from Moscow to St. Petersburg, which is a cool train, sleeper car, they serve you tea in the morning. But anyway, there was this young guy helping us with our luggage, and the train was late coming in, and he pointed to the empty track and he said, perestroika, meaning, Gorbachev's reform program. Before Gorbachev, the trains ran on time. And I said, oh, so you liked Brezhnev? And he said, Stalin. And this guy was like 25. I mean, he didn't remember Joseph Stalin.
Well,
but
I have a rare piece of art here, Bob.
yeah. Oh, cool. So is that Cyrillic?
This is an actual piece given to me by my friend John Alter.
What's that word?
Of perestroika art.
Oh, what is that the word?
It's like a bureaucratic stamping out humanity or something.
What does the word mean? That doesn't mean perestroika. That doesn't say perestroika.
I don't know what it means. Maybe
it's something PAT. Oh, maybe it's No, it's not.
I don't think it says perestroika, but the point is that it's a piece of art that was supposed to show that they were reforming the bureaucracy, not that they were changing the means of production or the mode of production from communism to capitalism, but they were making the bureaucracy less inhuman. A brief period of time, and I don't know how much success they had, but they produced that great work of art.
That is nice. I have want a couple of quick updates. It's been a year since the proposal by India and South Africa to loosen intellectual property protection or eliminate it even on vaccines. Biden said months ago he was in favor of it. Nothing like it has happened, and apparently any progress on that ran into trouble this week in the at the World Trade Organization as affluent nations continue to oppose it. And it's crazy. It's like, according to this piece I read, 2.3% of people in low-income countries, I don't know how they're defining low-income, but anyway, there's some number of countries at the bottom of the income bracket whose vaccination rate is 2.3%. Now, leave aside social justice issues. If we don't get these places vaccinated, I just think new variants are going to keep arising. We're going to be in this world forever. Is it such
an obstacle? Is paying off the owners of the patent such an obstacle? I mean...
just Bill Gates saying, here's $1 billion, can we...
Well, there are a lot of Bill Gateses who are willing to donate millions and millions of dollars, and it doesn't bother me that the people who founded Moderna are in the Forbes 500. I think that's a good thing.
I've been saying an opportunity for Biden is to get, like, the pharma heads together with the altruistic billionaires and say, look, I have the emergency power to mandate things. This is a crisis. I'm not going to quite end your patent protection. I mean, I assume he could plausibly threaten to have this, but some major restriction, like say, okay, but you can't charge more than something very low, like $2 a dose or something. Whatever would give them some profit, and then have these billionaires step in and say, yeah, and they will pay for vaccines at that rate to give vaccinations to poor countries. Now, I know they have to build infrastructure to make the vaccines, but we've been playing this game for a year. If they had started doing that a year ago, if there had been patent reform a year ago, and they were and more people were free to build more factories, I think we'd be in a very different space. And this could be a huge PR coup for Biden.
Sounds like a job for Ron Klain. It's the sort of thing he's good at.
But look, seriously, it's a global leadership vacuum. Nobody's going to take their cues from China, given their role in the origin of the pandemic. This is waiting for Joe Biden to do something decisive that does force the pharma companies, to take a little bit of a haircut and does something dramatic. It's possible. It's possible. Dream big.
You do get the impression Biden sort of floats along events without taking much original decisive action.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody Look, again, he is, at the risk of repeating myself, I don't think the guy he once was, but he was probably never a super creative political strategist, and I don't think he has one.
Bruce Reed is pretty creative. He supposedly writes his long strategy memos.
Email Bruce about this.
I emailed Bruce once. He didn't return my email, so I sort of decided to leave him alone.
Maybe if you drop my name, that'll put...
That's why I'm a terrible reporter. I'm not...
You're not persistent. No, you got to bug the hell out of these people.
Well, also, anytime you email somebody in the White House, it becomes part of the permanent government record, so you can't really say what you think. And if you email somebody privately, isn't that like then they get into Hillary Clinton email trouble? So you can't do that because
You
you're
mean
not supposed to
email
go
them
around the White House system to do business, right?
Oh, I don't think you have to worry about that.
I think they do.
He can't help it if he receives an email at his address. If he
Right,
thinks,
but if he answers the email, it's a problem.
well,
for him.
that's his call. He knows what the proper thing to do is.
Yeah. Well, I think
Flood
he's
it.
made his call.
Spam
The call was not to answer the email.
Spam the hell out of him. Drop my name.
So there's been a fusillade, a tsunami, a triple hit of evidence for the lab leak hypothesis.
You had me at
They discovered
fusillade.
another contract where the guy was gonna, where the U.S. and Wuhan, that British guy who's the font of all evil, and Wuhan were gonna synthesize a bunch of different strands of coronavirus to make a super, normal strand that was gonna.
Oh, you mentioned this guy last week.
No, this is a different one. That was aerosolizing it. This is recombining various strains. There was the discovery that they had bought a whole bunch of PCR tests for the coronavirus months and months before they admitted that the coronavirus existed in their country, like in March instead of December. Why did they do that? Perhaps because they knew that there was leaking.
They had tests for COVID in March of 2019.
They were PCR tests. I don't know if they were COVID tests.
Well, that would matter,
yes.
wouldn't it?
And it might have been May. It was one of those M months.
Okay, but this is kind of a critical question, whether they were PCR tests for like COVID or like the flu. That would really matter.
I
don't want to drill down too
I
deeply here on your hypothesis, but like we have to be talking about COVID.
I'll answer that in the Parrot Room because in the interval I'll look it up.
Okay.
But
hey, I have. Okay,
I'm pretty sure it must have been.
So
COVID
anyway,
if
you
it's
think
all that.
evidence is actually growing for lab leak?
And the third thing is what was the third thing? The third thing was that they've looked at the hospital beds. If it was zoonotic, they're like a few people would get it from animals before it learned how to jump from human to human. So they're like expected like a couple hundred people in Wuhan to get it before like everybody in Wuhan started getting it. And they've looked at hospitals, and if it was just man-made, the number would be 0. But nope, the number was 0. So 3 pieces of evidence
that I heard
that are reasonably powerful,
I think,
in favor of the lab leak.
So you're saying, I had been thinking 50-50 lab leak. You're saying I should up that to what, 60,
I think you
70?
should up that. And the thing with the recombination is they haven't found anything in the wild with enough similarity to the COVID virus to make them confident that this was where it jumped off. They've discovered 96% similarity, but they need 99.8% or something.
Yeah, the closest thing I think would have branched off from it years and years ago, as I understand it. The closest evolutionary match they found. I'm not sure how unusual that is in cases like this, but here's, speaking of China, can I ask you whether I'm being too picky about my in my completely futile quest to bring the ideal of objective reporting back to mainstream media? Not that it can ever be realized, but I mean just as a value to strive for. Do you think I'm wrong to complain about this? And granted, this is subtle, but so it's a piece by Anna Swanson, Keith Bradshaw. It's, what is the lead? The Biden administration offered. It's it's about the fact that they're choosing. Biden is choosing to retain the Trump-China tariffs as bargaining leverage. Okay, that's the story, which is kind of interesting. Anyway, here's the second paragraph. The comments provided one of the first looks at how the Biden administration plans to deal with a rising economic and security threat from China. Do you see what I would think is objectionable about that?
Yes, although
well, what is
I
it?
noticed
For
the European Union proclaimed China a systemic rival.
Fine, but I just think what a reporter should say: plans to deal with what the Biden administration considers a rising security threat from China or whatever.
That would be better.
I mean, that's not. This seems like a little thing, but I honestly believe that something's changed. In the New York Times, you would have been much less likely to see this 30 years ago. They would have said what the administration.
Yes, totally. But they totally they don't pretend that they're not on one side or the other. And but they have a task force. Pulsberger III has a task force that's going to deal with this problem, Bob. So you don't have to worry about it.
Okay, well, we can talk about that.
I'm sure they'll fix it.
So we've been talking an hour, Mickey. Salzburger Task Force. I'm writing that down as a possible Parrot Room thing.
No, the Parrot Room I was going to say that maybe Carlos Watson could negotiate this patent deal.
Hey, he's back. He's back.
He's back. He's Lazarus.
He says he's going to bring Ozzy back, right?
Yes.
So I would like to do a little in the Parrot Room, a little Ozzy Theranos compare contrast. Because some stuff came out about Theranos.
I have 6 points to make about Ozzy in the Parrot Room, Bob. Not just one, not two, not three, not four.
Okay.
Six. But the one overarching thing, which I only mentioned in the Parrot Room, that I'm now ready to let everybody in on, even the free people who listen to this podcast. I mean, the key point that the media tries to dodge around is that Carlos Watson was an affirmative action, diversity, equity, and inclusion play for all these investors. They obviously did it in part, as a sort of form of race preference. And the Washington Post had this hilarious thing where they dance around it for 20 paragraphs, and then they back themselves in a corner and they say, many investors saw Watson as a sympathetic, diversity play, and then in parentheses, Watson is black, capitalized. It's such an absurd.
Well, wait. How would you do it? You have to mention his race once you say.
I would mention it sort of higher up and not like in a parentheses with a capital B.
Well, yeah, but to mention it out of context seems weird. Like, why are you telling us this guy's race?
But it is the whole context. It's half the story. The point is that you have a guy like, I mean, it's what I didn't realize is there's this theory of the mismatch theory, which is prevalent on the right. It seems to have some validity, which is people that would ordinarily get in, black and ethnic minorities who would already get into Riverside completely on their merits. Race preferences come in and promote them to Berkeley, which is a tougher school where there's a mismatch between their skills, and so they would thrive in Riverside and they flail in Berkeley, and that's actually a problem for them. But they would do much better if they went to Riverside.
I first heard this. I first heard this theory from Fred Barnes in 1989 or so. But go ahead.
Well, now it's been. There's a guy named, I think, Sanders at UCLA who's got all sorts of data and seems to sort of prove it. And what I didn't realize is that the mismatch theory is the Peter principle. In other words, ethnic minorities are especially promoted to their level of incompetence in a way that whites are not. So Carlos Watson
whites are, to some extent, according to the Peter principle, this tends to happen to everybody.
The mismatch theory is the Peter principle on steroids, especially for minorities. So you have a guy like Carlos Watson who's really smart. I mean, my friend Ann Coulter pointed a tweet saying she went on her show. He was terrific. It was a terrific show. It sounded like a terrific show. It was called The Third Rail on PBS. It had like people yelling and screaming at each other in an entertaining fashion about politics. And what I saw of him in New Hampshire in 2004 was every question that he was asked, he had an interesting answer to it. Not the conventional wisdom answer, but something you didn't know before, and it was an interesting twist, okay? You never see that with anybody. Okay. So he's completely capable of being a superstar, and the system had to promote him to being more than a superstar into like the next Ted Turner or the next Mark Zuckerberg, which he obviously failed at.
He should have been famous for talking on CNN, in other words.
So it promoted him his level of incompetence. That's my theory of Carlos Watson. But I have 5 or 6 points in addition to that.
Oh, boy. My mouth is watering. The Peter principle on steroids is kind of an interesting. That's an interesting way of framing it. I give you. I mean, leaving aside what I think of the argument, that's a good. You should write that.
Thank you. A rare compliment.
You should write that, as we used to say. Now, okay, so we will talk about. So here's some things for the Parrot Room at patreon.com/Parrot Room. I want to get more car advice from you. Need to. I think I need to buy a car. This one looks like it's on its last legs. I want to ask. I do want to do Aussie and Theranos. I want to. I want to ask. I want to talk a little about the Iron Dome vote, not just the AOC vote, but the Rand Paul vote against Iron Dome. I think is one I want to get your take on. There's other things I have, but let me find them. What else do you want to? You know what? Here, you told a joke last week. A ribald. Is that the word? Was it a ribald?
Did I make it clear that I stole that joke? It wasn't my joke. I stole it from a friend. I think
all jokes are stolen. No one ever makes them up. I don't know where they come from originally.
No, there are people that make them up. Bob, they're in the Hollywood Hills over there, and they make $100,000 a year.
Okay, that's where they all come from.
Even more than that.
But I don't think I've ever met someone who told me a joke they had actually made up. It's always a joke you've heard. You don't have to footnote them. Okay. I admire.
But you do in this town, Bob.
Oh, that's true. I can see that. Nobody in where I live would imagine that you thought up your own joke. Anyway, what I'm wondering is, so it was a, what are the words? Racy, ribald, involved in a sex organ. It involved a blowjob.
That's all you have to say.
It was good. It was a good, it was a good joke, not a, it was a good joke. But, should I roll out my John Wayne Bobbit? Was that his name?
You should, but I can tell right now it's not going to be as good as mine.
It may not be. I agree. Yours, the more I thought about it, was good. And I want to talk about a little more about why yours was so good.
Okay.
It was really an excellent blowjob joke, Mickey. Congratulations.
It was told to me by an excellent comedian.
Give that guy a raise, whoever it was. John Wayne Bobbit, for people who don't know, who are too young. Well, let's just say it was a win-win outcome. His wife got to cut off his penis, and he got to become a porn star with a reattached penis. But I'll fill in the background more. And I think I'm going to tell the joke. What the hell, right? Let's go crazy.
And that sounds good.
So
I have. While you're establishing your hipness, I will establish my unhipness and say there is a web meme that I haven't the faintest fucking idea what it means. And maybe our readers can help me out. Our viewers can help me out. Or you can help me out, but I don't think you'll know what it means.
I doubt I'm cool enough. But speaking of that, one thing we failed to talk about was the Facebook crisis. Facebook's worst week ever. Maybe we'll talk a little about that.
I have so little to say about Facebook.
I just have a little to say about Facebook. But anyway, web meme.
I have a name for what this podcast should be called.
The one we're on now?
Yeah, this incredibly branded one, which is badly branded one, which is like, hey, it's buried somewhere in the Wright show, and if you search for Mickey Kaus, you can find it.
You've got a name nominee?
Yes.
Oh, I had a near-death experience. I want to talk about that. Almost got killed by a car.
I wanted to. Well.
And, I had a dream about Mort Kondracke that I need to share with you. Do you ever dream about Mort? Mickey, do you ever?
Does it involve a blowjob?
No. Do you ever dream about Mort?
No, I did have. I've been thinking a lot about Fred Barnes lately.
Well, that's just because I just mentioned him, maybe.
No, it's because there's at the New Republic, you would ask Fred how was his column this week, and he would go, "It's done."
It has the quality of doneness, is the way he would put it.
It has the quality of doneness, which came to be known as the Barnes quality.
Yeah.
So I've done a lot of things that have the quality of doneness. That's about all they have. There are a bunch of other things we could talk about.
Well, that's a lot right there. It's going to be a hell of a Parrot Room, folks.
There's a new Parkinson's cure every week, but
Bring them on.
This latest one sounded especially promising.
Good. All to the good. So, hold on.
And we could talk about Kagan. You could talk about Kagan for hours and hours.
We could. We
right?
could talk about Kagan. Yes, we could. So.
If you're not talking about Kagan all the time, Bob, you're contributing to the rise of fascism in America.
That's right. I've long said that.
Every minute you spend telling a blowjob joke is a minute you could be spending denouncing creeping authoritarianism.
That is true. So, here's what I would say. Patreon.com/Parrot Room. If you want to contribute to, what is it we do? To, I guess, to blowjob jokes? What is it? What is the, no, no, we let's aim higher.
It's a frothy high-low mix of bad jokes and bad science.
No, but I mean the ideals represented by our whole enterprise, which is, fearless, frank, honest commentary on current events without fear of getting fired by MSM for violating some speech code or something. The freedom to tell blowjob jokes. I think that's it in a word. So
the night is young, Bob, but so far we haven't been fired.
No. Finally, want to say goodbye and thank you to Colleen Smith, who until last week produced our episodes faithfully every week, and she has found greener pastures, as people tend to do eventually.
She was great.
She was great.
She was my second closest friend. Then I never even met her and sent her an email once a week.
You send her a lot of links. You sent her a lot of links. And she had only the highest regard for your links. She once told me that, I think.
The guy at the 7-Eleven may be actually my second closest friend. She was my third closest friend.
She'll take that. She's not picky.
It's an embarrassment of riches out here.
Yeah, so thank you, Colleen. She's moving to NOLA, or she's moved to NOLA. You know what that means?
I do know what that means.
It means New Orleans. Okay.
Everybody knows what that means.
Yeah. Also smash the like button. Right?
Right. And call your representative and tell them you don't want the refundable child tax credit.
That I don't endorse. Oh, look, there's only 2 cups now.
One of them fell on the ground.
Okay.
We're making progress here.
I'll take door number 3.
We're down to 2 programs.
Okay. So we will, there's money under one of them. I didn't know that. Okay.
That's the gimmick.
Okay.
Can only fund one of them.
I got it. And that was the money I saw when you lifted up that cup was actually $2.1 trillion.
Well, they are minting the $1 trillion coin, maybe.
Oh yeah, that's one way out of this.
How big is the $2 trillion coin? It doesn't have to be big, right? It could just be
fits in your pocket.
Have they even designed it?
I don't know. I'm a little behind the whatever.
The best way to get diamonds across New York is the safest way is to give them to one of the Jewish diamond merchants, and he puts it in his pocket and walks across New York.
They shouldn't let that secret get out.
They should do that with the $1 trillion coin, just for fun.
Yeah.
They got to get to the Federal Reserve. Hey, over here.
You look trustworthy. Okay, so it's on to the Parrot Room.
Okay, see you there.
See you there.